Behind the Shades.
But when it comes to the grief, I think we are not as equipped and prepared. And I think part of that reason is the arrogance of us. I can get through it. I'm not really supposed to show the emotion because I have to be strong, right?
Okay.
Especially when there's children involved. Because as you mentioned, this is the first time that they're seeing you cry. Now, if you put it on another parent and they're the ones who's responsible for the emotional well-being of the family, they may not have in their mind, they may think they don't have the time to break down because everyone else is breaking down around them and they have to be this pillar of strength. So when you're helping yourself and when you're helping these other people who are going through it, what is maybe a stumbling block or stumbling blocks that people go through during the grieving process that you have noticed?
One thing I've noticed that pretty much everyone I've spoken to, the biggest thing, stumbling block, the thing that makes them stuck is guilt. For me, it was if I'd only gotten him to the doctor when he first started getting sick, if I'd only done something, there must have been something I could have done. I could have insisted on him going to the other hospital. Who knows, maybe they could have helped him, as it turns out. But you just start thinking always what ifs. And others go through the what ifs, or they go through the I should have's, or they feel guilty because maybe their marriage was kind of rocky at that point, or maybe they'd had an argument just before, or maybe you know they weren't there with them at the time of passing. All these things come into play and mess with your brain. And the best way I got through it was to remind myself that a time machine has not been invented yet. I can't go back and change things. So if I can't change things, why should I let those thoughts invade my brain and invade me as a person? We had a good marriage, and I would hear most people who seek my help is because they had a good marriage and they can't get along without, or they didn't have a good marriage and they can't deal with the guilt they're feeling about that. They truly loved each other, but maybe things weren't ideal. And yeah, guilt is one of the biggest stumbling blocks. It's where people get stuck the most.
That's a good point that you mentioned because that's what I would think it would be. Or if we take it a step further, maybe someone may say, why him and not me?
Oh yeah.
Right? I was the one who was more unhealthy. Like you start to project, right? You have this survivor's guilt saying that, well, he did everything right. She did everything right. He was healthy. She was healthy. Now, here I am, not as equipped because that's what you feel, even though it may not be true.
Mm.
So, guilt, I can definitely see being a big one that would put the surviving spouse in a difficult situation, especially if they feel that they're unprepared because now they're looking around and everything is on them. So, as you're helping Cindy, these people, what kind of tools, or maybe how do you coach them to continue forward with their life? Because their life does have to continue forward.
Oh yeah, yeah. And if they've come to me like within the first week, there it's just pretty much just listening to them, picking out things that seem to be repeating, and then addressing those things slowly and carefully, because they're not ready to have this big life-changing aha moment. It's not going to happen. They're not going to feel it. They're not going to see it. So it's a slow process, and it's a careful process. And I just kind of, like, for somebody who feels like they may have or should be over it by now, I hate that. You don't get over grief. There is no expiration date on grief. You're going to feel it the rest of your life, just not as acutely as you do in the beginning. It reaches this plateau where it's just under the surface, and 98% of the time you can deal. It's that 2% of the time that sneaks up on you, even after 20 years. I had a woman, it had been 20 years, and she came to me because she was still feeling guilty about things. And so I also have them do some exercises, like if I can tell that maybe their self-esteem isn't quite what it should be, I have them, they have a week to do it, list 10 things about themselves that they like, 10 character traits that they're proud of. If they can't come up with the 10, then they need to ask friends and family or coworkers or bosses, what is it about me that makes you smile, or that makes you like me? And it's an eye-opening experience for many. They usually end up reading it back to me because they write it down. They don't have to, but usually it makes them feel so good, and to say the words out loud, it helps to reinforce. And I just tell them, pick one a day and remember that throughout the day. It'll get you at least 10 days further in. And that's what it's all about, especially in the beginning stages. It's one day at a time. So if you can move forward just this day, tomorrow will be just a hair better.